Hi, I'm here with Lainey and we're going to be working with bridge today. So bridge is a staple of what we maybe call a back bend in yoga, but what I find for many people is they maybe overdo it just a little bit when it comes to bridge, and we end up with some neck issues and maybe a little bit too of an exaggerated arc. So we're going to be working with bridge and kind of taking a step back, and I'll walk you through here right now some of the essentials that's important to note with bridge and how it is that we can prepare and practice a pose like this safely, functionally, and effectively. So Lainey's lying on the floor, and instead of necessarily kind of moving herself up in a thrusting sensation, she's instead going to start right out with prepping in neutral pelvis. So she's going to find those three bony landmarks, line pubis bone and hip bones up with the ceiling, and then at the same time, relax those front ribs down, taking a nice exhalation. So she has a nice neutral pelvis, neutral spine. This is going to also be a really good thing to help her challenge her stability and challenge those deep core muscles as well as her glutes without having the need to clench her glutes at all. So my philosophy is you put your body in the right place, those muscles automatically turn on. And that's what we're going to see to definitely be true and the case here in a pose like bridge. If you are somebody that has a neck issue and maybe you've lost the curvature in your cervical spine, or when you come up into a pose like bridge, you just feel like all of the weight is on your neck itself, you're definitely going to want to be using the variation with using the blanket, which I'll show you at the end of this video how to set up that blanket to help keep that curvature in your neck. So definitely a practice that you can use, and just having that blanket nearby when you're in class or when you're practicing at home, so you can just utilize that at your convenience. But in the meantime, Lainey's going to bring her arms down to her sides. And when you're setting your legs up for bridge pose, you can see right now that Lainey's fingers are nowhere close to her heels. So kind of old school bridge has you really tuck your heels up super tight and then expects you to be able to move your pelvis through that really kind of tight folded angle of the hip. So not only does this really create a lot of compression in the lower back, it can also put a lot of stress and strain on the knees. And when we reach for the heels or we pull our fists towards the heels in a pose like bridge, what we're actually doing is flattening out the cervical spine. So we want to really make sure we pay attention to that and honor the cervical spine, because we already do enough activities that flatten out that cervical spine already. Things like computer work, texting, and even driving. All that forward head is really flattening out that curve. And we don't want to be doing that in a practice like yoga that's supposed to be helping our bodies. So Lainey's going to move her heels out a little bit. Awesome, looks good. And so her feet are going to be about hips distance. I love using props between the legs because they really help accentuate that midline of the body, so inner leg line into the pelvic floor. And if that's your goal for the bridge, this is going to be a great practice for that. So she's going to stick the block between her thighs and give that block a nice hug. So immediately from that, she's going to feel her pelvic floor muscles turn on. And as her teacher, I'm going to come over and look to make sure her feet are parallel. So if you have a leg length discrepancy or maybe you have a hip out of alignment, a lot of times you'll have a staggering foot. So it's my job as a teacher, and your job as if you're a teacher, to come around and check that. If you're not a teacher and you're just a student, a really easy trick to do is line up your toes with the edge of the mat. And so then that way you can feel the edge and you know your feet are essentially going to be lined up. So Lainey's just a little off, so she's going to bring just this foot forward a little bit. And now she's nice and even, well, a little bit to front, there we go. Now she's nice and even, and just as a little disclaimer, this might feel a little awkward for some people, especially if they're used to that staggered stance. So encourage them, or I'm encouraging you, that we're learning to kind of bring our body back into balance, and this might be an area of that focus. All right, so give the block a nice squeeze. She's going to lift with neutral, like I'm picking her up like an ornament on the exhalation. So nice deep breath in, Lainey. Exhale, push into your feet and bring yourself, we're not going to roll up, we're going to lift all at once, like taking a board off the floor like a piece of plywood. So nice deep breath in. Exhale, pick yourself up all at once into kind of a modest bridge. So this looks really nice. From her shoulder through her rib to her hip to her knee, she's on a nice angle. So as she hugs on the block, I always like to use the cue, now imagine tipping your tailbone to the backs of the knees, and she should feel some good glute work. And if I'm just touching her glutes a little bit, I know she doesn't mind, and she can feel those activated. I'm not telling her to squeeze her glutes, but rather I'm encouraging her to keep the alignment of her pelvis and to keep the alignment of her legs, and she's going to feel those glute muscles automatically turn on. Because when you're in a pose like bridge, if you over squeeze the glutes, you're actually going to turn off the rectus abdominis, and we want those rectus muscles to be turned on. They don't need to be rocked hard, but they do need to have some resistance here because that's also a part of that bridge pose. That's helping you pick up, stay up, and be stretched simultaneously. So now when it comes to the shoulders, it really depends on what your focus is. One, you can stay with a broad upper back, so you're not going to tuck the shoulders at all. Some people call this a shoulder bridge. So you feel that broadness of the upper shoulders, your weight's on the back of the head, you're not on the neck, and you're in this great bridge pose. Second, you can create more of a shoulder and a chest opener by inhale, rocking to one shoulder and tuck the other under, and then do that simultaneously. And then grabbing hold of the fingers. Now, if you can't clasp fingers, this is when you're going to want to be able to clasp a strap or your sock or your yoga bag, something that you can be able to create some anchoring down into the floor rather than towards the heels. Remember, we want to honor the cervical spine. As she stays here, inhale, really focusing on breathing wide into the lungs. If you're a woman, you're kind of trying to stretch that really tight bra that you might have on. That's really clamping down on the rib cage. Or for men, if you've ever wore a heart monitor, that really kind of pins on your lungs. You want to breathe into that and create a lot of space. Bridge is really focusing on the heart center energetically. So we have a lot of emotion stored here. It's not uncommon to have some really deep rushes of feelings and emotion. I have had people in class cry in bridge pose and kind of not know why, and so just encouraging them to allow that process to happen. Remember, we are emotional beings living in these physical bodies. We're not separate, but very integrated. So really important to encourage your students to do that. We're going to focus on nose breathing, and with the chin slightly to the chest, we're also stimulating the thyroid. So we don't need to jam it. We're just going to notice, though, that now that breath is muffled, and we create almost a little bit of an ujjayi breath just by having the chin slightly to the chest. So as she's here, again, imagining pushing the pubis bone to the ceiling, engaging on the block, and working on that volume of breath. How long to stay here? 10 breaths is definitely a good workout, but essentially you could gauge that however it is you'd like. To come down, we're going to roll down. So inhale, lift your heels, Lainey, unwiggle your shoulders, let go of your hands, and articulate your spine down from the bottom to the top. Try to roll through every vertebrae like the bottom of a rocking horse. And then slowly take it to the mat. Nice job.